You are listening to the Body Shameless Series podcast, episode 3. I am your host, Molly Fitzpatrick, a writer, stylist, and graduate student. The Brave series of this podcast features women that have survived severe eating disorders and are now sharing their stories and giving a voice to women in the midst of a body image battle. These women are on a mission to eradicate the stigma associated with eating disorders by creating support communities and using media in a better way to promote a healthy body image. These women talk about the negative impact of media on body image and why this issue matters.
Why should I care? Well, I'll throw out a few facts and figures. One, this is an issue that I'll throw out facts and figures in a moment. One, body image issues and food issues thrive in shame and secrecy. So without a conversation about it, they just fester. They just get worse. So it's important to bring these conversations out, because if we don't, then they're like a little piece of rotting something. Like they just get bigger and rot further if we don't bring them into the light. But I think, why should I care? If you're somebody that's listening and is like, body image issues, so shallow, so pretentious, so not one of the most important things, it's not world hunger or something. These challenges are what keep people from contributing to the world. Every human being has gifts, and when you're enwrapped in body image challenges and eating disorders and food issues, you don't have an ability to contribute your gifts to the world, and that's a real loss. In terms of our global community and all of the people who could be contributing something beautiful.
On this episode of the podcast, Chelsea Roff talks about the socio-cultural causes of eating disorders, the power of imagery in media, and shares her story of an eating disorder that nearly took her life at only 15 years old. As the founder and director of Eat, Breathe, Thrive, Chelsea is passionate about preventing food and body image issues and representing all bodies in media.
I struggled with a pretty severe bout of anorexia in my youth. And by pretty severe, I mean it nearly took my life. I've said before, I think it was the darkest darkness I've ever found myself in. We all experience dark nights of the soul, and this was definitely mine. It started when I was probably 10 or 11, and I didn't recover until I was 19. So it was a good decade of my life. When I was 15, actually, I had a stroke as a result of the malnutrition that was, part of the eating disorder. And I found myself at a hospital for a long time. I was in a hospital for 18 months, and that was really, the godsend that I needed to get my life back together and recover. I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version. So fast forward several years, I got into yoga. That was an extremely, extremely helpful practice in my own recovery. I would never suggest that it's a miracle cure or that it's a panacea or that it's, a cure for eating disorders, but it was an invaluable complement to traditional treatment for me. And so I was doing pretty well in my life and was pretty happy and had a really regular practice and was studying neuroscience and psychoneuroimmunology in university. And I got into researching yoga and developing 6-week interventions for people with immune conditions. And then I got asked by an old doctor of mine to come and first offer a talk and then a yoga class and then a full program to people with eating disorders. So I did it, and I wasn't real excited about it in the beginning, to be honest. I was a little nervous about going and working with people with eating disorders, given that I'd struggled with one in my past, and I was kind of scared to be reminded of a dark period of my life, and I was a little scared that maybe I didn't have my stuff together enough to be doing something like that. And I found kind of the opposite. I really loved and enjoyed it. I had a real special ability to connect with people having that experience because I'd had it myself. And, one thing led to another, and a few years go by, and all of a sudden I had a nonprofit. When I started the organization, it was about four years ago, I had a full-time job as a science journalist, and I was sort of doing this volunteer side project called Yoga for Eating Disorders, and it was basically the programs that we run in Eat, Breathe, Thrive, but it was just me, and I was just doing it in an eating disorder treatment center near my house and offering it for free. So that was kind of the humble beginnings of Eat, Breathe, Thrive, and I called that program Yoga for Eating Disorders, because that's what it was, because it was a yoga-based program for people with eating disorders. And when I launched our campaign to get funding to start the nonprofit, a mentor of mine reached out to me and said, "You need to change your name." And I said, "Why should I change the name? That's, it's a clear, specific name. When somebody sees the words Yoga for Eating Disorders, they know exactly what it's about." And she said, one, Yoga for Eating Disorders is limiting. Like, you're probably not always going to work with just people with eating disorders. And she said, two, you're focusing on the pathology rather than the actual result of your programs. And I thought that was really good feedback. So Eat, Breathe, Thrive emerged from sort of like a reflective, like, what are we really trying to help people do? What do we want the end result to be? And Eat, Breathe, Thrive sort of encompasses it, or at least touches on each point. It's an ability to eat healthy, to breathe, and to engage in embodied practices like yoga and meditation, and to have a connection with one's own sort of presence in their body. And then ultimately, it's to thrive. It's to have a life free of food and body image challenges. The cool thing is that, this started with just me, but today we've got several dozen facilitators all around the world. We've got some in the UK, we have some in Italy, we have some in Canada, and they're spread out all over the U.S. And those facilitators run our programs in those settings. And our programs are 6-week programs, followed by a service project in the community, and they combine yoga, meditation, and psychoeducation, so learning about how your body works, and doing some work around like media literacy, again, to help people foster positive body image and a healthy relationship with food. So I see food and body image issues as developing kind of, from a biopsychosocial group of causes. So you've got biological causes in sort of one area. So those are like genetics and epigenetics and just sort of the traits we come into the world with. You've got psychological causes like trauma and anxiety and depression, and we tend to kind of self-soothe ourselves when we have experiences like that with disordered eating issues, and body image issues, of course, go along with that. And then you've got social causes and sociocultural causes. That's stuff like the media, the food industry, the diet industry, the fashion industry. There are sort of socially sanctioned ways. Our culture and our society has a set of norms in terms of what's considered an ideal body. And oftentimes when people are having a hard time in their life, and not feeling happy and dealing with depression and anxiety, one way that they often, kind of reach toward an anecdote is by trying to change and fix their body. And those sorts of things come from not just the fashion industry and food industry and the diet industry, but also social media. I stay out of the social media conversations that tend to be negative around body image, just because I don't like them. I find them to be really, really sad. So, I hear of a lot of women who get shamed for their bodies in, the comment sections of articles and blogs and all of that kind of stuff. And I sort of just choose not to engage there. I think that the more subtle kind of side of body shaming is actually the stuff that isn't that overt. That's not, some troll sitting in his basement, commenting on someone's, body parts and shaming or insulting someone else. I think the more subtle form of it comes in the bodies we choose to depict in the media and the bodies we choose not to depict, the people who are invisible. So people of different abilities, people of different ethnicities, older women, men that don't fit the gender stereotype, people of different gender identities. They don't get seen at all. So it's not even that they're shamed, it's just that they're not seen and they're not represented as a standard of normality or goodness or acceptability. I'm actually thinking about this a lot right now because we're putting together some educational materials, and I was trying to find imagery that depicted a diverse spectrum of bodies and of humans, really, not just bodies, but human beings. And I had a hard time finding what I was looking for. So I think to answer like a really practical answer is through imagery. Like I just got a catalog in the mail. I hate that they send me catalogs, but I just got a catalog in the mail from an athletic wear line, and they're marketing well because I wear yoga pants all day long. And I opened it up, and all I saw was thin, tall, white women. I think we underestimate the power of imagery. I think imagery is what moves people and what subconsciously shapes their ideas about what is normal and what's ideal and what's acceptable. And so I think if there's one way that and we're starting to see it a little bit, but not just a curvy bodies are beautiful sort of thing. It's like, yeah, and so are skinny bodies, and so are tall bodies, and so are brown bodies and yellow bodies. People often think of this as like a women's issue, and I think that it's body image and food challenges affect, in our experience, doing the work we do, affect people of all different genders and gender identities. It affects people of all different ages, people of all different ethnicities, and in terms of like acute level eating disorders, the two times that we see, two, maybe even three times we see eating disorders really flare up and sometimes emerge for the first time is usually puberty, in the transition from adolescence to like college life to early 20s sort of time, and then again later in life after pregnancy and maybe after kids leave the home. So oftentimes these issues flare up around big transitions, big life transitions. I don't know that, you ask why it was important to use my own kind of story or my own experience. I have to say I didn't mean to. I think that it came about really organically. I sort of felt like a fraud if I wasn't being honest about why I was doing the work. It's weird because it would take me by surprise. Like I would be teaching and I'd be like, blah, 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 here's how your autonomic nervous system works, and like, really coming with all this great information that I thought would be helpful. And then somebody would ask a question about, depression or about hopelessness. And I would have to kind of, if I was going to answer them honestly, I would have to dig into my own experience with those things. And the more I did that, the more I found people responded and got better. And so I think that this work has sort of pulled it out of me rather than me coming in and going like, here, how can I use my own story to help people? It was more like ask this kind of stuff. And I found that the more I was honest and transparent about my own experiences, and the more I pulled authentically and like genuinely from those experiences rather than like coming in with an outside idea or coming from like the top down from an academic approach, the more I like could dig into my own experience of struggling with anorexia and recovering and all of the like the nitty gritty of those emotions, the more I could pull from that, the more I was able to connect with the people I was trying to support and to serve. Yeah. So I think that for a long time, shame kept me small, and it kept me in the dark, and it kept me hiding. And when I was able to kind of look back at the shame and go, what is it you're so scared of? Who is it that's under there? Oftentimes those very things I was scared of being big, of being too much, of being, too outspoken and too talkative are now what served me most in being able to offer something and be of service to other human beings. So, that was my lesson. Still learning it some days. I mean, I hope this makes sense saying it, but it feels like the true answer. For me, I struggled with not just body image challenges, but a full-blown eating disorder. And part of recovering from that was actually getting through the shame of, like, moving through shame. Both the shame of having struggled with an eating disorder, but also the shame of being all of a sudden a person who took up more space in the world. And the lesson I learned from that, in that process of healing and recovering and really just kind of coming into myself and coming into my fullness and who I am as an embodied creature in the world, was that the things I was most ashamed of were often my biggest gifts. So for instance, like, I used to be really ashamed of how outspoken I was and how opinionated and talkative I was. Like, I was the kid in school who, was bossy and like got told that I talked too much. Was so ashamed of my bigness. And so for me, when I feel shame about something now, I tend to want to shine a light back at it and look at what it is I'm ashamed of, because my experience so far has been the things that I'm most ashamed of have brought me to my biggest gifts. It's not a big advice giver, but words of wisdom. I might encourage her to look beneath the surface. For me, if I have body image challenges come up, and they don't come up very often, it's a beautiful thing about recovery is, like, I don't really body shame or get insecure about my body very often, but when I do, usually it's because there's some feeling or emotion that I'm not dealing with, or there's some source of, like, shame that I'm not looking at. And my mind tends to, like, it's almost like an old habit or an old pattern where my mind doesn't want to feel that thing, so it like spits it out as I hate my belly instead. It's like it's easier to say I hate my belly or I hate my body than say I feel really lonely right now or I feel really ashamed of what I did. So for me, the body image issues are an indicator that there's something else going on. So if I have any words of wisdom to share with someone else out there experiencing body image challenges, I know it seems like it's about the body. I know it seems like it's, well, I'm just fat, or, there's something wrong with my hair, or there's something wrong with my face, or I just don't look beautiful. It's really about that. It's probably not. There's probably, body image challenges are nothing more than an indicator of something deeper going on. And so my words of wisdom would be look beyond the surface. Look underneath and see what's really there. Why should I care? Well, I'll throw out a few facts and figures. One, this is an issue that well, I'll throw out facts and figures in a moment. One, body image issues and food issues thrive in shame and secrecy. So without a conversation about it, they just fester. They just get worse. So it's important to bring these conversations out, because if we don't, then they're like a little piece of rotting something. Like, they just get bigger and rot further if we don't bring them into the light. But I think, why should I care? If you're somebody that's listening and is like, body image issues, so shallow, so pretentious, so not one of the most important things, it's not world hunger or something. These challenges are what keep people from contributing to the world. Every human being has gifts, and when you're enwrapped in body image challenges and eating disorders and food issues, you don't have an ability to contribute your gifts to the world, and that's a real loss in terms of our global community and all of the people who could be contributing something beautiful. 80% of 10-year-olds are afraid of being fat. 1 in 5 women feel dissatisfied with their bodies, and I think that's probably an understatement. And full-blown eating disorders are the most deadly mental illness of all psychiatric illnesses. So these are really pervasive issues that suck gifts from not just individuals, but our global community. So I think it's important to have these conversations because it brings people out of their isolated, lonely world that they're living in the midst of these challenges, and into the light and into the community and really into service, into being able to offer their gifts in their jobs, to their kids, to our education system, to our health system. When people are immersed in food and body image challenges, they can't contribute, and that's a real loss to our world. The other thing I would add on, just because I assume some of your listeners are probably dealing with these challenges, body image challenges, not feeling good in their own skin, not being connected to that inner beauty you're talking about. I think I would just share that speaking from personal experience and also speaking, I think, on behalf of many people who work in this community, you can totally get over this, and not get over, but maybe move through and transcend this. This isn't permanent. You won't always feel insecure and ashamed of your body. You can feel good in your body, and I think that's so important to hear and to say, because for a long time, I thought I was going to deal with this the rest of my life. I thought I was going to wake up every day and look in the mirror and just have to grit my teeth and get on with it because I was not born with one of those good bodies. And I don't believe that's true. I believe whoever you are, no matter what you look like, no matter what gender identity you do or don't identify with, no matter what ethnicity you are, no matter how tall, short you are, no matter what limbs you have or don't have, you can feel good in your body. I have seen it over and over and over again. And so I guess I would just leave you with a sense of hope and also a sense of like, hey, you're not alone. Like, these are the things we don't wear on our sleeves, but so many of us feel really insecure in our own skin. And you can transcend that. You can feel good in yourself. You can feel at home in your own body, and you're not alone.
This podcast is powered by Relatable Magazine, an inclusive magazine and online support community showcasing stories about a variety of women that have survived eating disorders, are breaking the boundaries of disability, and have dealt with body shaming. Relatable is passionate about giving a voice to women struggling with body image issues and using media in a new way to represent all body types, promoting body positivity, and giving a voice to the body image issues all women can relate to. Relatable hopes that you will share your voice and tell your story, because beauty is limitless, brave, and body shameless. Thank you for listening.